The setup: Late Show with David Letterman, January 15th, 2008. The episode aired on January 15th, 2008, on CBS. Don Rickles was there to plug his HBO documentary and throw zingers at Dave and fellow guest Denzel Washington. On that show, Letterman normally followed his own format of one guest at a time. This tradition started to fade out of fashion in the 1980s when Late Night with David Letterman introduced its one guest at a time approach. So what happened next was genuinely surprising. Denzel refuses to leave the couch. Normally, guests depart after their interview is over, but in this case, Washington asked if he could stay because he wanted to be insulted by Rickles. Letterman said sure, and Don happily obliged to Denzel's complete delight. IMDb. Washington had dropped by to promote his 2007 film The Great Debaters, the second film he'd ever directed. He told Letterman's producers he'd like a front row seat to the Don Rickles experience. Washington was born in 1954 and grew up during the comedian's talk show heyday. He was in his 20s when NBC began airing the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast, and, given his glee at getting to share the stage with Rickles, no doubt watched the man lay waste to an entire dais with his withering dices/film. Rickles was turning 82 in 2008 and generally saved his energy for his live performances. Rickles was as sharp as ever whenever he took the stage, but everyone knows Father Time is undefeated. So, if you ever dreamed of getting insulted by Mr. Warmth, time was getting to be of the essence. Rickles entered to the strains of La Virgen de la Macarena, a tradition that started during Carson's run on The Tonight Show. A beaming Washington got to his feet to shake Rickles' hand and was greeted with a warm hug and a peck on the cheek/film. When Don Rickles walked onto Letterman and immediately called Dave the dummy before roasting Denzel Washington on live TV, you're witnessing comedy royalty doing what it does best. The moment Don Rickles walked through the curtain, the energy in the Ed Sullivan Theater shifted. As usual, the bullet-headed Rickles entered to the strains of La Virgen de la Macarena, a tradition that started during Carson's run on The Tonight Show. The audience erupted. Even before Rickles opened his mouth, people knew what was coming/film. And Letterman, the host of the show, was the first target. This was nothing new. Around a time of the new tens and stretching back decades, Rickles continued to make plenty of appearances around the late-night talk show circuit, and when he did, you could often expect a lot of roasting thrown at the host's expense. Dave had been on the receiving end of Rickles' barbs for years going back to his early late-night days in the 80s, and the two had developed an almost affectionate rhythm, the sharpest insults always wrapped in the warmth of mutual respect. TV tropes. Rickles himself once said of the relationship, "Johnny was a loner, as David Letterman is. And I became good friends with David Letterman." That friendship was precisely what made it safe and funny for Rickles to be so ruthlessly cutting. The audience could feel that underneath every insult was genuine fondness. Fresh Air Archive. On this night, Rickles looked Letterman up and down and wasted no time. He called Dave a dummy and questioned what exactly the man did for a living. At a separate Letterman tribute event, Rickles' style of going after Dave was summed up perfectly when he quipped, "It's sweet of you, Dave. I know your busy schedule of going to the bank and trying to figure out what the hell you do." That was classic Rickles on Letterman, undermining the host's authority right there on his own stage, in his own chair, in front of his own audience. Yahoo! Letterman, to his credit, sat there and took it with his usual bemused, slightly pained expression, laughing through gritted teeth the way only a man who knows he's completely outmatched can. Rickles didn't ease up. He kept returning to Dave with fresh volleys, questioning his relevance, his looks, his whole existence as a TV host, before finally giving him a deliberately limp, dismissive handshake, as if shaking hands with someone he'd just met at a bus stop and wasn't particularly impressed by. This was Rickles' trademark take-no-prisoner style, blasting targets as hockey pucks and building a reputation as an equal opportunity offender who spared no one, not fans, not presidents, not fellow celebrities. Dave was no exception, host or not. NBC News. Then, almost as if Dave had ceased to exist, Rickles made small talk with Washington before sarcastically telling the host it was nice to see him, the ultimate dismissal, delivered with a smile. The "nice to see you" was so dripping in sarcasm that the audience roared all over again. Film. It was the perfect setup. By thoroughly humiliating the most powerful man in the room first, the host, the man running the whole show, Rickles established the rules of the night. Nobody is safe, nobody is untouchable, and the bigger you are, the better a target you make. Denzel Washington, sitting right there on that couch, was watching all of this unfold with pure delight, and he knew his turn was coming next. Then Rickles turned his sharp tongue on Washington. He wondered aloud why Washington was still on stage. Does he have to clean up? And later reminded the star that he'd never been in one of his movies. I could have played the guy picking the cotton. We could have faked it. Film. Washington laughed and clapped his way through the entire segment, which is some of Rickles' strongest talk show work of that decade. Everything that made you is fair game for Rickles. Your race, religion, physical uniquenesses, romantic misfortunes. He let you have it, and he wasn't suave or sparing. He also didn't care how big of a star you were. He got famous mercilessly roasting Frank Sinatra to his face at the peak of his Rat Pack fame. Film. The magic of that night was the combination of a comedy legend at the top of his game and one of Hollywood's biggest stars who was genuinely, unguardedly delighted to be on the receiving end. It remains one of the most beloved clips from the entire Late Show run, a perfect collision of two legends who clearly had deep mutual respect wrapped in gleeful insults.